Welcome to the Graph's Mission Control Testnet kickoff call. This is our very first Testnet call, so welcome and thank you all for joining. Thank you for your patience as we got set up this morning. My name is Tegan Klein and I focus on GRT relations here at the Graph as well as business development. And it's with my pleasure to introduce our co-founder and project lead, Yaniv.
Hey everyone. Really excited to have you all join us today. Thank you so much for joining. This is a really big milestone for us, starting our testnet and really opening up the Graph to a much wider community. So welcome. I'm going to assume that you all already know what the Graph is. So I'm just going to start with some high-level motivation. And then I'm going to pass it over to Brandon, who's going to discuss in a little more detail, about the testnet and our protocol design philosophy. And then Eva is going to cover some of the logistics for next steps getting started on the testnet. So just want to go back to around 2015. I started getting really passionate about functional programming. And I was inspired by a guy, Rich Hickey, who is the founder of the Clojure programming language and an immutable database called Datomic that was a big inspiration for us. And of course, functional programming is all about building on immutable data and pure functions, right? Deterministic computations. And at that time, I realized that so much of the complexity of software development is because we're not building on immutable data, and just having mutable databases behind these microservices was getting really complex, and is a cause for a lot of difficulty just in information systems. So I had that mindset earlier on, before I really dove into Ethereum. I was working at a company called MuleSoft, which does API developer tools for enterprise. And they were building these enterprise service bus systems for integrating all the backends for large Fortune 500 companies, connecting legacy databases to SaaS products and all around. And these systems are really, really brittle. And I got to see the software that's kind of underpinning large Fortune 500 companies, and realize that, again, a lot of it is just kind of intractability of the mental models that we're building the software on top of. It was around that time that GraphQL came out, and I realized right away that the GraphQL was really solving all of the big pain points with APIs and how to help people, coordinate application developers from back-end engineers. And as someone who really cares about building great products, I could see that this was really going to be a really big deal in helping people build great products. I was at this conference that MuleSoft was holding with CIOs and directors of these Fortune 500 companies, and the CTO was up on stage talking about digital transformation, and this is kind of what they sell to the large enterprise, and how an asteroid is coming, and you don't want to be the dinosaur. And I think an asteroid is coming. I think that's true. Presumably the point of that, talk and slide was that, you could, avoid being the dinosaur if you use, some new products. But I don't think that there's anything that they can do, because I think a big change is coming. These Fortune 500 companies are really just one part of these large institutions that are really industrial era institutions, And I think we're starting to see, these institutions failing. And we're seeing, big loss of trust across the board in these large industrial era institutions. And, everything from, banks, governments, media companies, large corporations, including tech. What's clear is that there's this transition that's happening thanks to the internet. The internet is really a fundamentally new technology that just changes everything, but we haven't created new institutions that are internet native yet. And that's really what protocols are all about, and that's what we're building. And the shift is coming. I think we're just at the beginning of understanding what protocols really are, right? Having open, transparent systems of coordination that people understand, that they have a voice in, that they can impact, that they can contribute to freely. And, I hope that the graph can really help further the state of the art in helping us understand what protocols really can be, and that these things are going to really transform how everything works. The graph is this indexing layer on top of all of the infrastructure protocols. Today we support Ethereum, IPFS, and we're going to be expanding to more blockchains later this year. And it's really this global API that as more and more activity starts moving to open, transparent protocols, all of that data needs to be indexed and then serve applications. And we really want the graph to be the global API of all of the world's public information. And if you think to like some sci-fi kind of movies, you've probably seen where they're like, hey computer, get me the rainfall in Uganda over the last 5 years, and it just puts up a chart, on their AR kind of dashboard. That's the graph, right? All of the world's public information indexed, organized, accessible to anybody with just a few keystrokes, or maybe as we're seeing with GPT-3, just a simple text string. So I think that the nature of applications in this decentralized world is going to change. And I think people are still very much think in terms of the last generation of applications. And I think, we still don't truly know what a real dApp should be. And I think that that's something that we at the Graph have been working really hard to try to define. A dApp, right, a decentralized application, is something that you should really be able to just deploy onto fully public infrastructure, and it just continues to run as specified no matter what. And I think this vision existed in 2017, and I'm sure most of you were around in 2017. There was a lot of hype. We were going to decentralize everything. And people really believed that. And then, the market crashed, and a lot of those, hopes kind of disappeared. But I actually think that people were right. I think they saw something. They saw the shift that's going to happen. And the problem is just that the infrastructure wasn't ready yet. You couldn't actually build these dApps. And I think, we've been working really hard over the last few years with a lot of the teams in the space to really work out these missing pieces in the infrastructure layer. There's a lot of new design patterns that we need to flesh out, and the really kind of breakthrough protocols have been pushing forward and helping to come up with the right design patterns around things like governance and token economics and things like that. And I think we're actually getting really close to having enough of these design patterns in place and having the infrastructure mature that you can really build really great decentralized applications. And the main things to kind of look for to know, how close are we? Because clearly, it hasn't worked yet. We haven't seen a big proliferation of decentralized applications yet. And it's because we need to just get over the line. And the main things to look at is, how hard is it to build these decentralized applications? Today it's still very difficult. And just the ease and speed in which developers can build these things is obviously going to have a really big impact on how many of these we see. The second is, how good is the experience of using these decentralized applications? And I think we are going to see somewhat of a segmentation between experts that specialize in specific areas, specific protocols, and they're going to be the power users that really get in and want to participate in governance and do all of this kind of stuff. So it's okay for parts of these things to be complex, but then there also needs to be user experiences that are really easy to use, that are at the same level of polish as today's consumer apps. And for most people, that's what they need before they're going to start using a new application. And so there's a bar that we need to clear as far as how to build really great products that also just happen to be fully decentralized. And so I think we're making really rapid progress on both of these things. And we believe that in the next 6 to 12 months, the infrastructure for Web3 will be mature enough that we can go from this kind of 0 to 1 moment, right? And reignite that spark that we had in 2017, where suddenly Web3 really will be the next big platform. And just like we saw, when we had the Netscape moment, and then, seemingly overnight, there were thousands and then hundreds of thousands and then millions of websites, and the web just grew out of control. And we saw the same thing with the iPhone, where, people started building mobile apps, and mobile became the next big platform, and we saw millions of applications getting built. We really believe Web3 is the next big platform. And once we get the infrastructure to that place where we can have that 0 to 1 moment, we're going to have a true explosion in the types of creativity and things that people can build on top of this. And so for that, we need your help because there's a lot of software out there. The world's a really big place, and there's only so much that our team can do. One of the reasons that we built the graph as a decentralized protocol is because there's no way that one team, one service can, run all of the infrastructure, all of the databases, for the whole planet. It's just too much work. And we don't believe in large corporations, the way that, Google is like a giant multinational corporation. We don't want to scale to that scale as a team. I think, the world is much better with smaller, nimble, teams of people with high trust that work well together, loosely coupled. And that's really what protocols enable. And so, I think we have to move really fast, because I think, this wave is coming. And, by the time, right now, our hosted service that we've been running in production for the last 18 months, has been growing, 50% plus month over month, and we can hardly keep up with just like the scale and growth. And this is just with, a few hundred applications. So, when we get thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of applications getting built on this infrastructure, we need a lot more teams involved, geographically distributed, being able to actually look at how to optimize, the database access for all of the different types of applications that people are going to be building on the graph and on Web3. And so we're really excited to start bringing you guys in to help teach you about the graph, help you learn, how to become an effective indexer, how to contribute. I think it's a really interesting time to launch a protocol where I think that the people that have made it through winter to this point, I think are, the real pioneers. I think you guys are all pioneers, and this is this is going to be the group that's, the very first indexers on the graph. We hope to really get to know all of you during the next few months. This is, you're going to get as much out of this as you put in. And we want to get to know you guys, know what you're passionate about, what you're good at, what you want to accomplish. And I think we'll be able to get really far together, right? This is in this transition to the information age. I think we go from having zero-sum games to starting to play cooperative games, and we can really go a lot further together than we can individually. And there's just so much software out there for us to replace. And so the sooner we can join forces and build something that is much greater than the sum of its parts, I think the sooner we can take on the whole legacy coordination systems, and that's what we're here to do. So thanks again so much for joining. Really excited to work with you guys. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Brandon to go into a little more detail about mission control and some of our protocol design and philosophy.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Yaniv. That was great. Let me just share. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Great, perfect. Yeah, so welcome again to Mission Control, the Graph's first incentivized testnet. We're super excited to have you here. As Yaniv said, I'm Brandon. I'm one of the co-founders, the research lead. I've been doing a lot of the work designing both this testnet as well as the graph itself as a protocol. So I wanted to share a little bit with you guys about just what to expect. I think, well, actually, you guys answered the survey, so thank you guys so much for that. So I know that the graph is a little bit different than what you're used to with maybe your normal testnet. I think a lot of you guys have done kind of layer one, like consensus protocols. I think a few of you have done some layer twos and some decentralized markets. But the graph, you can primarily think of as a decentralized market for indexing and querying, which means it's very dynamic. So it's not just, running the software and, and seeing if, the consensus holds. There's really a lot of different ways to participate. And it's also a protocol, like Yaniv said, that's been running in production for 18 months, large parts of the software. So you're not going to be handed off something that is super green and you've never seen before, or at least not all of it. You're going to actually be working with software that's been hardened, running in production, and also learning from our team and all those learnings that have kind of come along the way. Primarily, you're going to be participating as indexers and curators. There's a number of other roles in the protocol that we'll have time to get into later. But at the core, what you're doing in the graph is you are one of the indexers, one of the service providers who's serving queries for subgraphs, the data sets in the graph, in exchange for query fees. So to give you an idea of what to expect at a high level, I think it helps to kind of reiterate our design principles in structuring the testnet. I think Yaniv's already touched on a few of these, but one part that's very important to us is investing in our community and investing in you guys. We really see this as, seeding a decentralized marketplace. I think Yaniv touched on a lot of reasons why we believe that is the future and that is the kind of more ethical way to grow a business and a network. And part of that is that it moves us from these zero-sum game, winner-take-all systems to these kind of positive-sum games. And there's a lot of ways in which this manifests, but one area that I thought was just really interesting as I was designing the testnet was looking at availability zones on Google Cloud where we could generate traffic for the simulations. And I noticed for the first time that Google Cloud doesn't have an availability zone in Africa. And it just kind of struck me that, in the old way of doing things, like a valuable service with network effects, whatever it is, for it to make it to a new place is really kind of, dependent on the centralized decision making. And not only is it dependent on that, but if someone else were to try and offer a competing service in that new area kind of entrepreneurially, it actually conflicts with the long-term goals of that first company, right? It's completely competitive. Like them expanding to this, someone else expanding to this new region actually hurts the original service. And the beauty of a decentralized market is that everyone who's participating can kind of be an entrepreneur. If you see an opportunity that, hey, here's this underserved, region, or there's this underserved set of data that needs to be indexed, you're kind of encouraged and incentivized to come in and respond in real time to that market opportunity. It doesn't rely on us. And if the graph were to disappear, or if the core team rather were to disappear, you guys can all keep this service running. So as I said, the graph is a little bit different than maybe what you're used to running in other test nets you've participated in. I think a few ways that manifests is the amount of infrastructure that's involved. So we have the graph node, which is one of the main code bases you'll be working with. This is a thing that's been running in production for 18 months. We have some additional agents and services that are kind of designed to help you interact with the economics of the protocol in an automated fashion. You'll be interacting with the Graph Explorer, which is a UI that interfaces to the protocol, and you'll be interacting with the contracts themselves. And so there's a lot of different pieces. And the Graph protocol itself composes a lot of different crypto economic primitives that we've seen in a lot of other protocols, but maybe not composed into this complex of a system. So we have things like Bancor style bonding curves, we have delegation, we have curation markets, we have state channels. There's a number of personas and protocol roles that you'll kind of need to learn. As I said, primarily, you'll be the indexer and the curator, but there's a number of ones that kind of fit into that ecosystem. And you'll need to learn how to make decisions effectively given the incentives of the protocol. So there's quite a bit to train you guys on. We'll be running workshops throughout the whole test net. So I don't want you to feel overwhelmed now, but this is kind of part of the investment that we're going to be making in you guys. And it will be a lot of work, but hopefully it'll be a lot of fun. And that's probably also the reason why they call it an incentivized test net, because we do want to reward your hard work. We want to reward the achievements you accomplished during the test net, which Eva will expand on more later. And we want to kind of reward the early members of our community that we think will be able to contribute most to the network after launch. And so we're seeing this as an investment of our time, resources, energy, all of that into you guys. So the next thing that we really wanted to look at when we were designing the testnet was making sure we were applying kind of intellectually rigorous design principles. And I think this is also something that kind of sets the Graphs testnet apart maybe from other ones you've participated in. So one thing that makes the goals of the testnet unique is that you can actually win or you can succeed by not participating in the graph. And what I mean by that, like other testnets, the goal is still profit maximization throughout the course of the competitive portions of the testnet, but you actually have the choice to exit the graph. And so we're going to have a testnet stable token called GUSD. Doesn't mean anything outside the boundaries of the testnet, but it'll be the thing that you expect to be more stable. Think of it like the stable coin for the testnet, and we'll have a savings rate where you can deposit that GUSD to get some risk-free rate of return. And there'll be an exchange rate between GUSD and graph tokens. So if you at any point feel like, hey, the opportunities that I'm seeing participating in the protocol aren't going to win me the testnet, then you can actually exit and you can use the risk-free rate of return. And that lets us simulate some more real-world dynamics. It lets us simulate, for example, like what would the effect of a flash crash on the GRT price be. It would lets us simulate just what are the effects of the opportunity cost of participating in a protocol. So if the savings rate shoots up to 10%, you could think of that as like a competitive staking protocol. But we wanted to create this very realistic economic environment. And from the network environment side of things, we'll actually be hitting you with traffic that we've collected in the testnet over the last, in the hosted service over the last 18 months. So you're not going to be getting, unrealistic, fake generated data. These are going to be real queries that we've collected and logged from real subgraphs that have been running in production. And so from that perspective as well, I think, this adds a sense of realism that we think sets this kind of testnet environment apart. As I said, the experimental structure after the onboarding phases, which I'll get to in a minute, are primarily around profit maximization. So that's kind of your main objective throughout most of the main phases of the testnet. Against that backdrop of you trying to maximize profits, we'll be gathering baselines of data, kind of seeing, what equilibriums seem to play out in the protocol. And then once we have like a good baseline, we'll be modifying individual variables in the protocol. So this could be something exogenous, as I said before. It could be as like modifying the exchange rate of GUSD and GRT. It could be as rapidly increasing query traffic. It could be tweaking protocol parameters. In general, we'll only try and modify one thing at a time. It'll either be like a ramp function or a step function. We're going to during the onboarding phases, we'll kind of train you on how to see these changes happening. So this is going to be stuff that you'll use our software to kind of perceive. We'll observe the dynamics of like how you guys respond to these changes. And then because we're pressed for time, we'll communicate precisely what the changes were and then give you some more time to respond. And so like if, maybe we make the change on one day and then like a day or two later, we'll explicitly tell you like, hey, we changed this thing, you might want to respond to it. And that's just so we can give everyone a time to respond, see what the new baseline is before we move on to the next phase of the experiment. And so the last thing that's going to be happening in the backdrop of kind of the main course of your profit maximization is that we're going to be doing a number of things to harden the protocol design, the economic design, et cetera. A lot of the data that we're collecting is going to influence the initial parameterization of the network. We're going to observe the failure modes, so when does participation drop below some acceptable amount? We'll be encouraging you to try out different economic attacks, and we'll have workshops on kind of what those might look like. And we'll be asking you to share with us what your most effective strategies as indexers are while participating in the network. So that's something that's very hard to simulate without some real world experience. Is kind of like what competitive strategies end up being the most productive in the network. And we'll be giving you workshops as well on that, on how to customize your strategy and modify the indexer agent, is what we call it. On the software side of things, we'll be stress testing the system with high query traffic. We'll be encouraging certain types of denial of service attacks. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of bugs that you guys dig up as well. And then on the product side, we'll be doing user studies with you throughout the testnet. So we're probably going to schedule them with a handful of you during this next phase that's coming up, phase 1. But we'll be evolving the software primarily, especially on the product side. We'll be evolving the software all the way up until mainnet launch. Our contracts and other software will be stable well before then, but the UIs that are kind of, and tooling that are helping you do your job, we'll be evolving that to continually improve the user and developer experience. And so we'll be getting user studies, user feedback from you regularly to kind of influence that iteration. And you can think of that as just kind of private beta software that will be continuously improving. So as I said, the testnet is going to be separated into phases. Each phase is going to last a few weeks. Schedule is subject to change. the first two phases, this phase 0 that we're in now and phase 1, the next phase, are primarily onboarding phases. And then phases 2 through 4 are kind of where the meat of the competition and the incentivized testnet comes in. So that's where many of the points will be earned. Phase 0 and phase 1 are kind of, I guess you could think of them as weed out phases, or you gotta run the basic software to kind of make it through, make it to phase 2. And we'll be, at the beginning of each phase, we'll be doing kickoff calls, we'll be doing Q&A on the previous phase and feedback. We'll be doing workshops to help you with specific actions that are coming up in the phases. So don't worry too much about everything you're seeing on the screen now, but just know that this is the general structure. And with that in mind, phase 0 is kicking off now. We're gonna have a workshop for you guys on Tuesday. And Yanis, our tech lead, will be leading that and show you. It's basically all about just running the graph node, which is kind of the core piece of software that an indexer runs. We'll have you index several subgraphs, share your query endpoint with the core team, and we're going to hit it with some low level of traffic. And that's just to make sure that, hey, you've been able to run the software. And then phase 1 will kind of onboard onto other parts of the economics, and then you'll be good to go. So I'm going to hand it off to Eva. She's going to tell you a little bit more about those logistics, talk about the rules and scoring, and kind of tell you where we're going from here.
Awesome, thank you. All right. Can everyone see my screen? Awesome. So I'll just go over a few of the logistics throughout the testnet. So starting off with a few of the rules, these are pretty basic, but mainly we ask that you don't hack the testnet or do anything that's malicious. As Brandon mentioned, we have been working on an internal beta for a while, but we are trying to make the best and most reliable network come to mainnet. And so we don't want the network to be broken, essentially. We also ask that if you've made any modifications to the node, that you communicate those. Again, that's for our learnings to better understand, some of the other strategies, attack vectors, etc. Documenting any data. So we'll also be able to track some of your data through your endpoints when you share that with us, but documenting data that you think is interesting, either from a query market perspective or indexers as well. And lastly, just completing the mission. So you are expected to complete the missions per phase. They will differ in their style. So as Brandon mentioned, in phase 1, we're doing a bit more user steady interactive, while in the later testnet phases, it'll be a little bit more competitive. But you are expected to complete them to move on to the next phase. In terms of scoring, our scores will be a combination of technical details as well as qualitative contributions. So anything from completing the mission to how well did you perform in profit, as well as how well are you performing with queries, what is your query throughput, etc. And in the qualitative contributions, we're really looking for teams that are providing feedback, are collaborative. If there's other products or features that they think need to be built in the graph ecosystem, working with us to figure that out. And then you can also refer to the Testnet leaderboard website, which is on the Testnet tab in our navigation. And you can refer there for scoring that will be up to date as frequently as possible. In terms of incentives, so as you might have seen in the package, we're giving up to 3% of GRT supply as a reward for testnet contributions. That'll end up being 10 to $100,000 US per indexer, depending on performance. And as mentioned, that could range from simply participating throughout the testnet very passively to teams that are extremely involved and collaborative. All allocations will be based on scores, as mentioned, and indexers are expected to follow the rules and follow the indexer agreement. So you'll receive that after the kickoff today. And there's some terms in there that just you should look over just to make sure you're clear on those. And just a note on the reward, so we will be doing a 12-month lockup. This doesn't mean that you can't stake, so you can stake as an indexer 12 months after network launch, and you can even, your rewards will be unlocked as well. But this is how we are hoping that we can create like a very bootstrapped and robust system after network launch. Later in the testnet, we'll also be starting a bug bounty program. So this is a little separate from testnet rewards, more specific on finding vulnerabilities. And that'll be from late testnet into mainnet. So you can think of these as sort of separate programs, but it's likely that a lot of indexers and developers who are involved in the testnet can also fulfill those bounties. So just going over a few of the requirements, immediate action items. So please join the Discord. There's an indexers channel. Please also set up 10 minutes with Rodrigo. This is just so we can get some face-to-face and understand what you're thinking, why you love the graph, and how you want to get involved. Please also fill out the additional information form. This is just some basic info about username so we can provide the correct access and also the Ethereum testnet address that your team will be using, and also the indexer agreement. So as I mentioned, that will have some more detail on scoring and rules. In terms of cadence and what to expect, so we'll have a kickoff call for every phase. That'll be the first Tuesday of every phase, hopefully. We're aiming for around 8 a.m. Pacific every time, but if we see a large number of indexers in different regions that need a different time, we can definitely adjust. As Brandon mentioned, phases will last 2 to 3 weeks, but again, that will depend on how quickly people go through the missions. Each phase will also be concluded with a form. So we love forms. We're going to try and pick up as much info as we can through them. So expect at the end of the phase, even if there isn't any data or mission specific information, we'll ask for some feedback or any questions that you might have. And we'll also have workshops and user studies per phase. So the next phase, or sorry, next week we'll have an indexer workshop, and in phase 1 it'll be user study focused. Just a few reminders about the Discord channel, as well as security disclosures. So we will be setting up, as I mentioned, a more robust bug bounty program, but throughout the beginning of the testnet, if you could either submit a PR through the repo that you'll get access to, or DM someone directly, Martine will be sort of the point of contact for support, but anyone in the graph team, you can contact. And Tegan will be managing email, so she'll be updating everyone in Discord as well as by email. Cool, and this is just a reminder of some of the dates. So next week, again, next Tuesday, the indexer workshop running through how to deploy a node, the kickoff the following week, and some user studies. There we go. Reminder of a few of our channels. Tegan can post these after in our chat as well. Telegram is mostly focused for more community, GRT focused conversations. The Discord will really be focused for developers. So anyone who's an indexer or a subgraph developer, please join the Discord. And also check out our blog. We do have exposure on Medium, but most of our content is on our native blog on the website. And lastly, just a reminder, if you haven't poked around yet and what are some of the APIs that are being built in the graph, we're really one of the most used protocols in DeFi, DAOs, and gaming. So do check out the Explorer, every public subgraph you can search for. And a lot of them have been deployed by teams who aren't the native team. So that's really the crux of this open data movement, is that anyone can use a subgraph and build one. Awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I think we're going to open it up for a few questions, and then I guess we can wrap up. Martine, have you been able to unmute everyone?
Yeah, anyone can unmute themselves.
Perfect. Yeah, so no pressure to get them all in now. Like as Eva said, there's a lot of channels to talk to us and our engineers and everyone else. But if there's any pressing questions now, we'd be happy to answer them.
So we have one question in the chat. What's the criteria to get onboarded? So there's no criteria other than completing a few of the action items as we mentioned. So if you set up a 10-minute call with Rodrigo, you fill out the form for additional info, and you also sign the indexer agreement. And those are just acknowledging some of the terms of the testnet. And then we'll give everyone access to the indexer repo. And in the indexer repo, it'll be updated for each phase. So that'll be the canonical location to get info about the graph throughout testnet, and also submit security issues.
So what are the hardware requirements? So why don't we hold that question for Tuesday? You could definitely run it on your computer, but it's going to vary a lot by the types of subgraphs that you run, the amount of subgraphs that you run, the amount of query traffic that you serve, and that'd be a better question for Yanis to field. One last thing on the just on the onboarding requirements is, I think part of what Rodrigo will be asking you is if you are a U.S. accredited investor or non-U.S. That was something our lawyers told us that we had to ask as one of the requirements for the testnet. So that'll also be part of that.
Yeah, just on that point, we will have to get some KYC information from participants to receive rewards, but that won't be necessary until later in the testnet.
There's a question, is there a step-by-step video that explains how to deploy a graph node? Not yet. We will be recording the workshop on Tuesday though. So you'll be able, if you can't make it, I know it's late for some regions, we'll be sharing that out afterwards. Yes, non-US participants are allowed, and US accredited participants, accredited investors, that is.
Hi guys.
Hey.
Sorry, maybe I've missed this, but what are the who are the competitors, let's say, of graphs in the space? I mean, who else does this? I mean, index querying.
Yeah,
sure, yeah.
I mean,
Yaniv, you want to field that?
Yeah, I'd say that the biggest competitor is really teams rolling their own custom indexing. We've seen a lot of that, especially before the graph reached a real level of maturity, that basically, they would try to build on top of, Ethereum, for example, realize, hey, I can't actually build a real usable app directly on Ethereum. And so we're going to have to build a custom proprietary indexing server that basically ingests the data, stuffs it in a database, and serves it. And that's really costly in terms of time and resources. And that's really what we've seen the most. And so that's kind of what the graph is replacing. There are plenty of folks that have, tried to do something similar. I don't think anyone has gotten any real traction. In 2017, there were a lot of white papers. It's really easy to write a white paper. It's a lot harder to build something that people use. So as far as projects that people are using, there aren't any other really indexing services that we really consider competitive. Now there are node infrastructure providers, and we don't really consider them competitive. A lot of them are actually signed up for the testnet, and I think we'll be able to use the graph as a big source of demand and growth. And really, the graph is kind of a layer on top of the node providers. So, you need to have access to the underlying chains, whether that's Ethereum or in the future. We want to support lots of different chains, so we'll need to connect to those full nodes. And there are many providers that run those nodes. And then the graph is this layer on top where you're indexing all of that data and serving clients. And as indexers, you could choose to use any of those node service providers. You can run the nodes yourself, and so we view ourselves as kind of complementary to those players.
Awesome. Yeah, we have does that answer your question?
Yeah, and a lot more. He's very passionate. So okay,
Perfect.
thanks.
There's a few questions around what hardware you're allowed to run or what you're allowed to use. I think someone asked if you can use cloud service providers. The answer is yes. Eva did mention that there's some data that you'll need to share with us as part of the requirements for the testnet. And so we ask that you actually share your hosting costs with us, because we'll actually be looking at profits. When we score your profits, we'll actually be taking into account the amount of money that you spent running hardware and software in the testnet. So this isn't something where you can just throw a lot of money at the problem and then be guaranteed that you're going to win. We'll be taking that into account. There's another question if there's going to be an email to arrange next steps. Yes, there will definitely be many more emails. You should hear everyone on the call right now. You're in, so don't worry about that. You'll be hearing from Rodrigo or other people on our business team.
There's a question about rewards for developing subgraphs. So for the testnet, the rewards will be participating as an indexer, although some of the tasks that we do expect are, curating on subgraphs, running through our UI, helping with some product feedback, indexing subgraphs. So those will be the rewards that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in the public network, I mean, the curator role kind of does get rewarded in some ways for developing subgraphs. If you build a useful subgraph that everyone wants to build on and you curate that subgraph, that's one of the ways you earn rewards in the network itself.
There's a question if we can start building the node before Tuesday's call. 100%. If you can follow the repo and there's no problems, then totally. The point of the call is to, you know, walk through it a little bit more granularly. We'll also be recording it, so in case you can't make it, you can watch it afterwards. And everyone will receive access to the indexer repo once all the action items are complete. So that includes the indexer agreement.
So there's a question, which network will the Ethereum data be coming from? You can choose to connect to your Ethereum provider of choice. You can run your own Ethereum node. You can use a professional node hosting service. You can use Infura. It's really up to you. So we'll be running the, so I misinterpreted your question. Yeah, so this is gonna be running in Rinkeby. All our testnet contracts will be deployed to Rinkeby. The subgraphs that you'll be indexing will be deployed to Rinkeby and so on, as well as the testnet GUSD and savings rate contract that I had mentioned.
Brandon, I think that's not quite correct about the subgraphs that people will be asked to index. I think those can be on other networks too. Sorry, yeah, I should have clarified. They'll be deployed to Rinkeby, but the data will be coming from other networks. So that's a good nuance to bring up. So all the protocol contracts and the subgraph deployments will happen on Rinkeby, but it's possible that the subgraphs reference data to index, and that data could be coming from, very likely will be coming from mainnet. And we'll be showing you how to configure all of that on Tuesday. Thanks, Yanis.
There's a question on US node operators. They will need to be accredited in accordance with our lawyers. We are expecting you can only run one node. And so the reward is per team. You know, if there becomes a need for you to run multiple nodes, then that might be a, you know, per case basis, but the rewards are per project team.
Yeah, and just to clarify on that, I mean, like we run, like in the hosted service, you could think of like from the network's perspective, like we run a single indexer, which, you know, some people might say is a single node, but behind that interface, we run like a cluster of nodes. So from an infrastructure perspective, you can run as many like graph nodes as you want. Again, this is stuff that Yanis will be going into, like how our Kubernetes is configured on Tuesday. And then similarly, you know, within the testnet, if you want to use multiple different Ethereum keys for whatever reason to try and, you know, take advantage of the economics of the system and like move some of your tokens to another Ethereum key, you're more than welcome to do that. So it's pretty flexible in that regard.
Great. Well, I think we're coming up to the top of the hour. So thank you all for joining us. This is really the moment that the Graph Network really becomes distributed. So thank you all for being a part of this journey. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us and we can get those answered for you. And yeah, thank you all so much. Have a great and productive day or night. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.